Get your worthless hands where I can see them, boy. Park's not for people like you. Officer Kincaid's knuckles whitened as he jabbed his flashlight into Marcus Washington's chest, hard enough to make Jalen flinch behind his father's leg. Look at this. Acting like you belong out here. You think being some single daddy gives you special permission to loiter around kids? Marcus didn't move. His civilian clothes made him invisible to men who saw only stereotypes instead of the soldier who once briefed generals. And neither of them had the faintest idea whose name would answer the number Marcus was already dialing in his pocket. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from, and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across Riverside Park as Marcus Washington watched his son with quiet pride. Jalen's determined expression reminded him so much of his late wife, that same focused look as the boy reached for each bar, moving steadily across the playground equipment. These peaceful Sunday afternoons had become their special ritual, a chance to just be father and son without the weight of the world pressing in. The crunch of tires on asphalt broke through Marcus's thoughts. His military-trained senses picked up the deliberate way the patrol car crawled to a stop, the officers inside studying him with predatory focus. He kept his expression neutral, though his jaw tightened slightly. He'd seen that look before. The assumption of guilt, before a word was even spoken. Officers Kincaid and Dwyer emerged from their vehicle with an air of manufactured authority. Kincaid's hand rested casually on his holster as they approached, his stance aggressive. Dwyer hung slightly back, his face a mask of false professionalism that didn't match his cold eyes. "ID!" Kincaid barked, not even bothering with a greeting. "Now." Marcus remained seated, his movements deliberate and calm. "May I ask why you need to see my identification, officer?" "Got reports of suspicious activity around the playground," Dwyer cut in smoothly, though no such calls had come in. "Just doing our due diligence." The implied accusation made Marcus's stomach turn, but he kept his voice steady. "I'm here with my son. He's right there on the monkey bars." Kincaid's lip curled. "Yeah? Prove it's your kid. ID. Don't make me tell you again." The sound of sneakers hitting wood chips announced Jalen's approach. The boy's eyes were wide as he took in the scene, his earlier playful confidence evaporating. "Dad, what's going on?" "Stay back!" Dwyer snapped, causing Jalen to stumble backward. The boy's lower lip trembled slightly as he tried to process why these officers were being so hostile. Marcus felt a surge of protective anger, but channeled it into razor-sharp focus. He'd faced down threats in war zones. He wouldn't let these badges with attitudes shake him. "Officer, please don't speak to my son that way. He's done nothing wrong, and neither have I." "Getting lippy now, huh?" Kincaid's hand shot out, grabbing Marcus's arm and trying to wrench him forward. "How about we discuss your attitude down at the station?" Marcus didn't resist, but he didn't yield either, staying firmly seated as Kincaid's face reddened with frustration. "Remove your hand, officer. I have not consented to being touched, nor have you established probable cause for an arrest. You trying to tell me how to do my job?" Kincaid's fingers dug deeper. "Looks like resisting to me. What do you think, Dwyer?" "Certainly seems uncooperative," Dwyer agreed smoothly, his hand now also resting on his weapon. "Perhaps we should call for backup." Marcus could read their intent clearly. They wanted him to react, to give them an excuse. They hadn't counted on his training, his ability to recognize and diffuse tactical situations. More importantly, they hadn't counted on him being prepared. With his free hand, Marcus calmly reached into his pocket and retrieved his phone. The movement made both officers tense, but he simply pressed a number on speed dial and put it on speaker. The ring seemed to cut through the tension like a knife. A crisp, authoritative voice answered, "General Collins' office. Secure line." The effect was immediate. Kincaid's grip loosened slightly, uncertainty flickering across his face. Dwyer's professional mask cracked just enough to show surprise. Marcus kept his eyes locked on the officers as he spoke. "Sir, this is Marcus Washington. I apologize for disturbing your Sunday, but I have a situation that requires witness." He could feel their growing unease as the pieces clicked into place. This wasn't just some random civilian they could intimidate. This was someone with connections, someone who knew exactly how to document and report abuse of power, someone who had probably faced far worse threats than two small-town officers with authority complexes. Jalen had edged closer to the bench, drawing strength from his father's calm demeanor. Marcus wanted nothing more than to pull his son close, to shield him from this ugly display of prejudice. But he kept his focus on the officers, knowing that any sudden movement could give them the excuse they were looking for. The park had grown quieter, other parents drawing their children away from the tense scene. The late afternoon sun caught the officers' badges, making them gleam like fool's gold. All flash, no substance, corrupted by the men wearing them. Marcus could see the wheels turning in Dwyer's head, trying to figure out how to spin this, how to twist the narrative. But with a general's office listening in, their usual tactics wouldn't work. They had unknowingly picked a target who knew exactly how to fight back, not with fists or shouts, but with accountability and witnesses. The silence stretched out, broken only by the distant sound of children playing and the subtle static of the phone connection. The power dynamic had shifted, and everyone knew it. These officers had walked up expecting an easy target, someone they could bully and demean without consequences. Instead, they found themselves under the microscope, their actions being recorded at a federal level. The warm afternoon air felt charged with tension as they reached this crucial moment. Marcus remained perfectly still, his military training evident in his controlled breathing and steady gaze. The phone connection remained open, capturing every second of this confrontation, ensuring that whatever happened next would not go undocumented. The speakerphone crackled with static as both officers stood frozen, their earlier bravado evaporating like morning dew. The voice from the Pentagon carried an unmistakable weight of authority that seemed to physically push them back a step. "Mr. Washington, are you under duress?" the aide asked crisply. "Yes, sir," Marcus replied, his voice steady. "I'm currently being accosted by two officers at Riverside Park while trying to spend Sunday afternoon with my son. Officers, identify yourselves. Badge numbers, now." The command cut through the air like a blade. Kincaid's face had turned an interesting shade of red, his mouth opening and closing without producing coherent words. Dwyer's hand twitched near his weapon, but the movement just made him look nervous rather than threatening. Officer James Kincaid, badge 4472, Kincaid finally managed to stammer out. "Officer Michael Dwyer, badge 3891, Dwyer added, trying to maintain his professional facade even as sweat beaded on his forehead. Marcus kept his phone steady as he spoke. "Sir, these officers approached me without cause, while I was watching my 8-year-old son at the playground. They demanded ID, grabbed my arm without consent, and spoke aggressively to my child. Officer Kincaid is currently gripping my arm in what I believe is an attempt to provoke a response." Kincaid's fingers sprang open, like Marcus's arm had suddenly turned white-hot. He took another step back, glancing desperately at Dwyer for guidance, but his partner seemed equally lost. "I've already contacted your department supervisor," the aide informed them. "He should be arriving shortly. Neither of you is to leave the scene or approach Mr. Washington or his son further. Is that clear?" "Yes, sir," they mumbled in unison, looking like schoolboys caught vandalizing the principal's car. Jalen had moved closer to Marcus during the exchange, his small hand finding his father's free one. Marcus gave it a reassuring squeeze, proud of how his son was handling the situation. The boy's eyes were still wide, but the fear had been replaced by curiosity as he watched these supposedly powerful officers reduced to nervous shuffling. The screech of tires announced the arrival of the supervisor's vehicle. Sergeant Martinez practically leaped out, his face set in grim lines as he surveyed the scene. He'd clearly been briefed on the situation and on exactly who Marcus Washington was. "Mr. Washington," Martinez addressed him directly, pointedly ignoring his officers for the moment. "I apologize for this incident. Would you please tell me exactly what occurred?" Marcus recounted the events in precise detail, his voice remaining calm and professional throughout. He described the unnecessary stop, the threatening behavior, the attempt at intimidation, all while Kincaid and Dwyer stood by, unable to deny any of it, with the Pentagon still listening in. "Officer Kincaid grabbed my arm here," Marcus indicated the spot where red marks were still visible, "after I had given them no cause for physical contact. They then attempted to escalate the situation when I requested they remove their hands from my person." Martinez's jaw tightened with each detail. When Marcus finished, the sergeant turned to his officers with barely contained fury. "Both of you, turn in your weapons and badges. You're on administrative leave effective immediately." "But, Sarge," Kincaid started to protest. "Not another word," Martinez cut him off. "Internal Affairs will be reviewing this incident thoroughly. Now go wait by your vehicle." As the chastened officers slunk away, Martinez turned back to Marcus. "Sir, I assure you this will be handled appropriately. We'll need your statement for the official record, but that can wait until tomorrow if you'd prefer to salvage what's left of your afternoon with your son." "Thank you, Sergeant," Marcus replied. "I'll come by the station tomorrow morning." After a few more minutes of procedural discussions and goodbye to the Pentagon aide, Marcus finally stood, still holding Jalen's hand. The boy had been remarkably patient throughout the ordeal, but Marcus could feel the questions brewing. "How about some ice cream?" he suggested, drawing a bright smile from his son. "I think we both deserve a treat after all that." At the ice cream shop a few blocks away, they sat at a small table near the window, Jalen attacking a double scoop of mint chocolate chip, while Marcus nursed a simple vanilla cone. The sun was starting to set, casting long shadows across the street outside. "Dad?" Jalen asked between bites. "Why were those officers so mean?" "We weren't doing anything wrong." Marcus considered his answer carefully. "Sometimes, son, people think having authority means they can treat others badly. But they learn the hard way that you can't just bully everyone. There are always consequences for treating people wrong. Like when you called the general?" Jalen's eyes sparkled with understanding. "Exactly." Marcus nodded. "It's important to stand up to bullies, but you have to be smart about it. Being prepared and staying calm is usually better than getting angry or scared." "You weren't scared at all," Jalen said admiringly. "I was worried about you," Marcus admitted. "But I knew we'd be okay because we didn't do anything wrong, and I had a plan to handle it." They finished their ice cream as dusk settled over the city, the street lamps flickering to life one by one. As they stepped out of the shop, Marcus noticed a police SUV idling across the street, its headlights trained directly on them. The next morning dawned crisp and clear, but Marcus's trained eye immediately caught the dark shape of the patrol SUV lurking halfway down his block. He stepped onto his front porch, trash bag in hand, maintaining his normal routine despite the unwanted audience. The vehicle's tinted windows concealed its occupants, but Marcus could feel their stares tracking his every move. He walked to the curb with measured steps, placed the bag in the bin, and made a mental note of the SUV's plate number. His military intelligence training kicked in automatically. Observe, record, analyze patterns. Inside, Jalen was finishing his breakfast, spooning up the last bits of cereal with one hand while trying to stuff his math homework into his backpack with the other. "Ready for school, buddy?" Marcus asked, keeping his voice light and casual. "Almost," Jalen replied, finally managing to zip his overloaded backpack closed. The drive to school was uneventful, but Marcus noticed another patrol car joining their route 2 turns after they left home. He took a few extra turns, confirming his suspicion. They were definitely being followed. At the school entrance, Marcus's jaw tightened as he spotted 2 uniformed officers standing near the main doors, apparently engaged in casual conversation with parents and children. Their body language changed subtly when they saw his car pull up. "Dad?" Jalen's voice carried a note of anxiety. "Those are more police officers." "It's okay," Marcus assured him, squeezing his son's shoulder. "Just stay close to me." They hadn't made it halfway to the entrance when the officers intercepted them, plastering on fake friendly smiles that didn't reach their eyes. "Good morning," the taller officer called out with exaggerated cheer. "We're conducting a safety survey with the students. Would you mind if we asked your son a few questions?" Marcus felt Jalen press closer to his side. "I mind very much," he replied evenly. "My son is a minor, and you have no authority to question him without my presence or consent." "Sir, it's just a routine," the second officer started. "No, it isn't," Marcus cut him off, his voice firm but controlled. "You're here because of yesterday's incident, and this is a transparent attempt at intimidation. I suggest you both remember that harassing a child is a serious offense." He guided Jalen toward the entrance, positioning himself between his son and the officers. "Come on, buddy. Let's get you to class." Inside the school, Marcus walked Jalen all the way to his classroom, something he didn't usually do. He knelt down to his son's eye level outside the door. "Remember what we talked about yesterday?" he asked softly. Jalen nodded. "Stay calm and be smart." "That's right. If anyone tries to talk to you about yesterday, or if any officers come around, tell your teacher right away, okay?" "Okay, Dad." Jalen hugged him tight before heading into his classroom. Meanwhile, across town at the precinct, Lieutenant Broderick's face had turned an alarming shade of purple as he paced behind his desk. Officers Kincaid and Dwyer sat before him like chastised schoolchildren. "A Pentagon complaint?" Broderick's voice was dangerously quiet. "You 2 geniuses managed to get the Pentagon involved in a simple stop?" "Sir, we didn't know who he was," Kincaid protested weakly. "Exactly!" Broderick exploded, slamming his hand on the desk. "You didn't know, so you acted like thugs, and now we've got brass from Washington breathing down our necks." He leaned forward, planting both hands on his desk. "Do you have any idea how this makes me look? How it makes this department look?" "Lieutenant," Dwyer spoke up, trying to sound reasonable, "we can explain it as a misunderstanding." "Shut up," Broderick snapped. "You've done enough talking. Now we've got to remind this man where he lives. He doesn't get to humiliate this department and walk away thinking he's won." Back at his office, Marcus was already implementing countermeasures. He pulled out a fresh notebook, recording the morning's events in precise detail. Times, locations, badge numbers, vehicle descriptions. He'd learned in the military that documentation was often the best weapon against systematic harassment. His phone buzzed with a text from his neighbor. "Police car's been parked outside for 3 hours now." Marcus added the information to his notes, then called his lawyer to update her on the situation. She agreed to file for an emergency restraining order if the harassment continued. Throughout the day, Marcus spotted patrol cars wherever he went. Outside his office, near the coffee shop where he grabbed lunch, circling the block as he ran errands. He documented each instance, building a clear pattern of surveillance and intimidation. When he picked Jalen up from school, the morning's officers were gone, but a different patrol car idled across the street. Marcus made sure to walk his son to the car in full view of the officers, letting them see his phone recording their presence. That evening, after Jalen was settled in bed with his comics, Marcus sat at his kitchen table reviewing his notes from the day. 18 separate instances of police presence, 4 different vehicles, at least 6 different officers involved. The pattern was clear. This was organized harassment, not random patrol activity. His phone rang, displaying a blocked number. Marcus answered but said nothing. "They're not finished with you." The voice was low, distorted, almost mechanical. The line went dead before Marcus could respond. He added the call to his notes, including the exact time and duration. Whatever game they were playing, Marcus knew one thing for certain. They had no idea who they were dealing with. Marcus settled into his dining room chair early Tuesday morning, laptop humming as he logged into his work system. The familiar sounds of Jalen getting ready for school drifted from upstairs, drawers opening and closing, the shuffle of sock feet on hardwood floors, the occasional thump of a dropped shoe. "Dad, have you seen my blue folder?" Jalen called down. "Check the coffee table, buddy. You were doing homework there last night," Marcus replied, his fingers moving steadily across the keyboard as he reviewed overnight security reports. The morning light streamed through the front windows, casting long shadows across his organized workspace. A legal pad sat to his right, filled with neat entries documenting every police encounter over the past 2 days. His coffee had just cooled to the perfect drinking temperature when 3 sharp knocks rattled the front door. Marcus's hand instinctively moved to his phone. He pulled up the video recording app as he approached the door, already knowing what he'd find on the other side. Through the peephole, he saw 2 uniformed officers, different faces from yesterday. Same predatory stance. "Who is it?" he called out, though he already knew. "Police, sir. We need to speak with you." Marcus opened the door but kept the security chain in place. "How can I help you, officers?" The taller one, his nameplate reading Morrison, stepped forward. "We received a report of a loud argument coming from this address. Neighbors are concerned." "There hasn't been any argument here," Marcus stated firmly. "As you can hear, it's just my son getting ready for school." He held up his phone, clearly recording. "Badge numbers, please." The second officer, Wheeler, shifted his weight aggressively. "Sir, we need to enter the premises to ensure everyone's safety." "No, you don't," Marcus replied calmly. "You have no probable cause, no warrant, and no consent. I'm recording this interaction, and I can clearly see your badge numbers. Would you like to explain why you're making false claims about a disturbance that never happened?" Jalen appeared at the top of the stairs, his blue folder clutched in his hands. "Dad?" "It's okay, buddy." "Just finish getting ready for school," Marcus called back, never taking his eyes off the officers. Morrison's jaw tightened. "Sir, if you continue to be uncooperative—" "I'm being entirely cooperative," Marcus cut in. "I've acknowledged your presence, responded to your claims, and explained why they're false. Now, unless you have a warrant, we're done here. I'll be adding this incident to my ongoing documentation of harassment." The officers exchanged glances before Morrison spoke again. "We'll note your lack of cooperation in our report." "I'm sure you will," Marcus replied, "just like I'm noting this entire interaction in mine." He closed the door firmly, listening to their retreating footsteps. Jalen came downstairs, his backpack now properly packed. "Were they here because of what happened at the park?" Marcus pulled his son into a quick hug. "Yes, but don't worry. They're just trying to make us nervous. Remember what I taught you?" "Stay calm and be smart," Jalen recited, managing a small smile. After dropping Jalen at school, Marcus returned to his work, but his concentration was broken by an incoming email from HR. The subject line made his stomach tighten. "Urgent. Confidential matter." He opened it to find a carefully worded message explaining that the department had received an anonymous tip expressing concerns about his emotional stability and suggesting he might pose a risk to workplace safety. The email asked him to schedule a meeting with HR to discuss these concerns. Marcus's response was immediate and thorough. He attached his detailed documentation of the police harassment. including timestamps, badge numbers, and video recordings. He explained the situation clearly, highlighting the pattern of intimidation that had emerged since the park incident. His military background and security clearance spoke to his stability, and he pointed out that anonymous tips coinciding with documented police harassment should be viewed with extreme skepticism. The workday passed in a blur of reports and virtual meetings, but Marcus's mind kept returning to the morning's confrontation. He picked Jalen up from school at the usual time, noticing yet another patrol car parked across the street. "How was your day?" he asked, as Jalen climbed into the back seat. His son was quieter than usual. "Mrs. Peterson asked me to stay after class. She wanted to know if everything was okay at home." Marcus's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "What did you tell her?" "I said everything was fine, but she kept asking weird questions, like if I ever felt scared at home or if there was lots of yelling." Jalen's voice wavered slightly. "Dad, did someone tell her bad things about us?" Marcus took a deep breath, fighting down his anger. "Some people are trying to cause trouble for us, buddy. But we're going to handle it the smart way, okay? Just like we always do." That evening, after Jalen was asleep, Marcus pulled out the security cameras he'd ordered with expedited shipping. He worked methodically, installing units to cover every approach to the house. One went above the front door, angled to capture faces clearly. Another covered the driveway and street, positioned perfectly to record license plates. Two more went up at the back of the house, eliminating any blind spots. Inside, he mounted cameras in the main living areas and hallways, not for surveillance, but for protection. Proof against any false claims that might arise. Each camera fed into a secure cloud server, backed up automatically every hour. Marcus knew the patterns of harassment from his military days, had seen how escalation worked, but this time, he was ready. Every move they made would be documented, every false claim recorded, every face and badge number captured in high definition. Marcus woke before dawn, his military habits still ingrained after years of civilian life. The house was quiet except for Jalen's soft breathing from upstairs. He moved to his laptop where the security camera feeds were displayed in a grid pattern. Something made him check the overnight footage. He sipped his coffee, methodically reviewing each camera's recording. At 3:17 a.m., a patrol car appeared on the street view. The vehicle moved slowly, headlights dimmed, creeping past his house like a predator. Marcus leaned closer, adjusting the playback speed. The car circled the block, reappearing at 3:21 a.m. for a second pass. "Got you," he muttered, capturing still frames that clearly showed the vehicle number. He added the details to his growing logbook, noting times, direction of travel, and the fact that the car's spotlight had swept across his front windows both times. After getting Jalen off to school, Marcus sat down at his dining room table, now converted into an operations center. His laptop displayed multiple windows: police department public records, civil court filings, news archives. Years of military intelligence work had taught him how to spot patterns, and something about this harassment felt organized, practiced. He started with complaint records against the precinct. The public database was sparse, but his Pentagon contacts had provided deeper access. Names began repeating: Kincaid, Dwyer, Morrison. More importantly, their supervisor, Lieutenant Broderick, appeared consistently. Marcus created a spreadsheet, tracking dates, locations, and types of incidents. "Same playbook," he muttered, highlighting another complaint that mirrored his own experience. Anonymous calls about disturbances, sudden welfare checks, escalating pressure until families moved away or dropped their complaints. A reference in one report caught his eye. Situation resolved by Division 9 intervention. He found the same phrase in 3 more cases, all involving officers who had faced serious complaints. Each time, the problems mysteriously disappeared, along with the complainants. Marcus opened a new document, typing quickly. Division 9. No official listing in department structure. His printer hummed as he gathered key documents. Using different colored highlighters, he marked names, dates, and patterns. Yellow for officer names, green for locations, red for Division 9 references. The pattern became clearer with each page. He pulled out a fresh manila folder, labeled it Operation Clean House, and began organizing the document's military style. Summary brief on top, supporting evidence categorized and tabbed, timeline of events clearly marked. His phone buzzed. A contact at the Pentagon had sent over sealed records from civil suits against the department. 3 had been settled quietly, with strict non-disclosure agreements. "They're running a protection racket in uniform," he said to himself, adding the new information to his files. The more he dug, the more connections he found. Division 9 wasn't just covering up bad behavior. They were systematically removing threats to corrupt officers. When Jalen came home from school, Marcus cleared the table, tucking the sensitive documents into his home office. He wanted dinner to feel normal, safe. They ate spaghetti, Jalen's favorite, while talking about his math test and upcoming science project. "Dad?" Jalen pushed his meatballs around the plate. Tommy asked why there's always police cars near our house now. Marcus set down his fork. "Remember how we talked about some people being bullies, even grown-ups?" Jalen nodded. "Like the officers at the park." "Right. And what do bullies want? To make you scared. To make you run away." "Exactly." Marcus reached across the table, squeezing his son's hand. "But we're not going to run away. This is our home. We belong here." "But what if they don't stop?" "They will," Marcus assured him. "Because I'm gathering evidence, just like a detective. And when I have enough proof, they'll have to stop. Not just for us, but for everyone they've been bullying." Jalen seemed to consider this. "Like when you taught me to stand up to Derek when he was picking on smaller kids at recess?" "Very similar," Marcus smiled. "Sometimes standing up to bullies helps protect other people, too." After dinner and homework, Marcus tucked Jalen into bed, making sure his nightlight was on and his favorite stuffed tiger was within reach. He read an extra chapter of their current book, wanting to extend this moment of peaceful normalcy. Back downstairs, Marcus spread his documents across the dining room table again. The pattern was undeniable now. Names, dates, incidents, all pointing to a systematic abuse of power. His military training helped him see the structure behind the chaos. Division 9 wasn't random. It was a deliberate tool for maintaining corruption. Looking at the evidence before him, the complaints, the settlements, the familiar patterns of harassment, Marcus whispered to himself, "This isn't just about us anymore." Marcus sat at his dining room table early the next morning, steam rising from his coffee mug, as he accessed secure databases through his military connections. The sun hadn't risen yet, but his mind was sharp, focused on exposing Division 9's web of corruption. "Let's see what you've been hiding," he muttered, opening case files from the past 5 years. Each summary revealed familiar elements, excessive force complaints that vanished, officers cleared despite damning evidence, witnesses who suddenly went silent. He created a detailed spreadsheet, color-coding incidents by type: red for violence, blue for harassment, yellow for intimidation. Names of Division 9 officers appeared repeatedly. Marcus noticed Officer Morrison's name connected to 6 cases where body camera footage had mysteriously corrupted. 4 different internal affairs investigations closed within days, marked insufficient evidence. "Same tactics, different victims," he said, scrolling through another complaint. A young mother had reported harassment after filing excessive force charges. Her case disappeared when she suddenly moved out of state, leaving no forwarding address. Marcus pulled up his own surveillance footage, adding timestamps and notes. He documented every patrol car, every random stop, every suspicious call to his workplace or Jalen's school. The pattern was clear: systematic intimidation designed to wear down targets until they broke. At the precinct across town, Lieutenant Broderick paced his office, face flushed with anger. "He's not backing down," he growled to Officers Kincaid and Morrison. "Time to show him what happens to people who don't know their place." "Sir, he's documenting everything," Morrison warned. "Maybe we should." "I don't care what he documents." Broderick slammed his hand on the desk. "Nothing official. No reports, no calls logged. Just make his life hell until he breaks or runs." Back at his house, Marcus reviewed his home security feeds while adding notes to his report. 3 different patrol cars had circled his block overnight. He'd started recognizing their patterns, the way they staggered their timing, how they used side streets to maintain surveillance without being obvious. "Amateur hour," he muttered, drawing from his military intelligence background. He could spot their observation points, the way they coordinated movements. They were treating him like a target, but they didn't realize he'd run similar operations in combat zones. Marcus grabbed his keys, heading out for groceries. He took a different route than usual, watching his mirrors. 2 blocks in, a dark SUV pulled out behind him. He turned left instead of right at the next intersection, confirming the tail. The vehicle stayed 3 cars back, exactly as he'd been trained to do during surveillance operations. At the store, he noted a patrol car parked across the street, officer pretending to check his phone. Marcus photographed the vehicle number discreetly while loading his groceries. On the way home, he took a winding route, counting 3 different vehicles trading off surveillance duties. "They're burning resources to track one man," he said to himself, adding the details to his log. "Getting sloppy because they're angry." Throughout the day, Marcus cross-referenced more case files with his own experiences. He found a family who'd filed brutality charges last year. Their children had been repeatedly stopped and questioned walking to school. Another victim reported constant patrol cars outside his workplace until he withdrew his complaint. His phone buzzed. Another anonymous tip had reached his employer questioning his mental state. Marcus added it to his documentation, noting the timing aligned with previous harassment patterns. He'd already briefed his boss on the situation, providing evidence of the orchestrated campaign against him. The afternoon sun cast long shadows as Marcus compiled everything into a comprehensive digital brief. He included surveillance photos, timing logs, pattern analysis, and connections to past cases. His military training showed in the precise organization. Executive summary up front, supporting evidence clearly referenced. Timeline of escalation clearly marked. He highlighted the key points. The pieces fit together like a puzzle, revealing a corrupt system designed to protect its own at any cost. Marcus added his own harassment documentation. Photos of patrol cars, logs of suspicious calls, school incident reports, workplace complaints. The pattern was undeniable when laid out chronologically. As night fell, Marcus did one final review of the brief. He'd been thorough, professional, letting the evidence tell the story. This wasn't just about 2 officers anymore. It was about a corrupt system that had operated unchecked for years. He opened his secure email, addressing it to General Collins. The brief was encrypted and compressed, ready for transmission. In the message field, he typed simply, "Problem appears systemic, not limited to 2 officers." His finger hovered over the send button for just a moment before pressing it. The message disappeared into the encrypted network, carrying with it evidence of years of unchecked corruption. Morning sunlight streamed through the living room windows as Jalen sprawled on the carpet, watching his favorite cartoon show. The animated characters' voices filled the room while Marcus reviewed his documentation at the dining table, making sure everything was properly organized. His phone vibrated. The caller ID showed a Pentagon number. "Mr. Washington?" a crisp female voice said. "This is Sarah Mitchell, DoD Liaison Office. I'm following up on the materials you sent to General Collins." Marcus stepped into the kitchen, keeping Jalen in view while speaking quietly. "Yes, thank you for getting back to me. Your report was comprehensive," Mitchell said, choosing her words carefully. "The General had our legal team review it immediately. Given the scope of evidence and the pattern you've identified, we've forwarded everything to the Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division, specifically their Police Oversight Unit." Marcus leaned against the counter, shoulders relaxing slightly. "How long before they review it?" "They're treating it as priority," Mitchell replied. "The combination of your military intelligence background and the quality of documentation made an impression. They're particularly interested in this Division 9 unit you identified." "Any timeline on next steps?" Marcus asked, watching Jalen laugh at something on TV. "They're moving quickly. The DOJ has already contacted city officials." She paused. "Mr. Washington, I want you to know, the General takes this personally. He doesn't appreciate his people being harassed, especially not when they're protecting their children." "I appreciate that," Marcus said quietly. "Keep monitoring and documenting everything," Mitchell advised. "The DOJ may need your testimony later. And, Mr. Washington, stay safe." Marcus ended the call, processing the information. The machinery of justice was finally moving, but he knew from experience that cornered opponents were often the most dangerous. Throughout the morning, Marcus maintained his routine while monitoring local news sites. Around 2 o'clock, his phone started buzzing with news alerts. The city had called an emergency press conference. He turned on the TV just as the mayor stepped up to the podium, looking uncomfortable. "After receiving credible evidence of serious misconduct," the mayor announced, "the following personnel changes are effective immediately. Officers James Kincaid and Michael Dwyer are suspended pending full investigation. Lieutenant Thomas Broderick has been temporarily relieved of field command duties, while Internal Affairs conducts a thorough review of Division 9 operations." Marcus watched the mayor field questions, noting how he avoided details about the investigation's scope. Still, it was more than he'd expected so quickly. The system could work when enough pressure was applied from the right direction. Jalen wandered into the kitchen. "Dad? Are you okay?" Marcus smiled, ruffling his son's hair. "I'm good, buddy. Actually, I think we should celebrate tonight. How about pizza at Tony's?" Jalen's face lit up. "Really? Can I get the Supreme with extra cheese?" "You got it, champ." Marcus grabbed his keys. "Let's head out early. Beat the dinner rush." At the restaurant, they settled into their usual booth by the window. The familiar smells of garlic and tomato sauce filled the air as their pizza arrived, cheese stretching in long strings as they pulled slices onto their plates. "Remember what I told you about standing up to bullies?" Marcus asked, watching Jalen attack his slice. "Yeah," Jalen said between bites. "Don't let them win, but be smart about it." "That's right. And sometimes, if you tell the truth and get help from the right people, things can actually change." Marcus smiled. "Those officers who were bothering us, they're in trouble now because we didn't back down. We documented everything and reported it properly." Jalen considered this, taking another bite. "So, they can't bother us anymore?" "Well, we still need to be careful," Marcus said honestly. "But we showed them we're not afraid. That's what matters." For the first time in weeks, Jalen's laugh came easily as he told Marcus about his day at school. Marcus savored the moment, watching his son gesture animatedly while describing a science experiment. It felt like before all this started, just a father and son enjoying dinner together. They lingered over their meal, sharing a cannoli for dessert. The sky had darkened by the time they headed home, streetlights casting pools of yellow light on the pavement. As they approached the precinct, Marcus noticed something odd. Usually, only 2 or 3 patrol cars would be parked outside at this hour. Tonight, he counted 6 vehicles clustered near the entrance, officers standing in tight groups. They drove past slowly. One officer turned to watch their car, his expression dark and angry. Marcus recognized him. Officer Morrison, one of Broderick's trusted Division 9 members. The man's face was twisted with barely contained rage as he tracked their car's movement. Marcus kept his speed steady, not reacting, but he noted every detail. The number of officers present, their positioning, the tension in their body language. Jalen was focused on his phone, unaware of the police presence. Marcus maintained his calm demeanor while processing what he'd seen. The unusual gathering of patrol cars, the officers' grim expressions, Morrison's open hostility. It all painted a concerning picture. He steered their car toward home, deliberately taking a route that would avoid passing the precinct again. In the passenger seat, Jalen hummed along with the radio, still riding the happy wave of their celebration dinner. Marcus settled into his living room armchair, surrounded by meticulously organized case files. The house was quiet except for the soft hum of the air conditioning and Jalen's gentle breathing from down the hall. He'd just finished his 3rd security check of the evening, testing door locks, confirming camera feeds, and verifying motion sensors were active. The digital clock on his phone showed 11:47 p.m. His laptop screen cast a blue glow across the coffee table where he'd arranged key documents. Years of military intelligence work had taught him to trust his instincts. And tonight, they were screaming at him to stay alert. He pulled up the exterior camera feeds on his phone, cycling through views of the front yard, side gates, and back patio. Everything looked normal, but the street seemed too quiet. No cars had driven past in over an hour, unusual even for their residential neighborhood. Marcus checked Jalen's door one more time, cracking it open just enough to see his son's peaceful sleeping form. The boy had fallen asleep, clutching his favorite stuffed dinosaur, looking far too innocent to be caught in the middle of all this. Back in the living room, Marcus organized another set of documents detailing Division 9's pattern of late-night raids. He'd uncovered multiple instances where they'd struck without warning, always claiming to have warrants that never materialized in court records. The digital clock ticked over to 11:58 p.m. when the house plunged into darkness. The sudden silence of dead electronics felt deafening. Marcus's muscles tensed as his combat training kicked in. This was no random power outage. He could hear the electrical hum from houses across the street. Heavy footsteps creaked on the front porch. Multiple sets of boots, trying to move quietly, but betraying their presence to his trained ear. Marcus was already moving, staying low, when the first impact of the battering ram shook the front door. Crash! Wood splintered as the doorframe gave way. Flashlight beams cut through the darkness, sweeping across his furniture. Multiple figures in tactical gear stormed through the entrance. "Police! Search warrant!" a voice bellowed. But Marcus saw no papers, no proper announcement, just masked officers charging in with weapons raised. He moved silently down the hall to Jalen's room, bare feet silent on the carpet. His son was sitting up in bed, eyes wide with fear. "Shh," Marcus whispered, scooping him up. "Stay completely quiet, buddy. Just like our safety drills." Jalen nodded, clinging to his father as Marcus retrieved his phone from his pocket. He activated the audio recording with practiced fingers, capturing the sounds of destruction from the front of the house. "Find that bastard!" a voice shouted. "Tear this place apart!" "You can't hide from us, Washington," another called out. "Should have kept your mouth shut." Marcus recognized Morrison's voice, despite the attempt to disguise it. He guided Jalen through the darkness, using his perfect mental map of the house layout. They moved in a low crouch, avoiding windows where their silhouettes might be visible from outside. The sounds of systematic destruction followed them, furniture being overturned, Drawers dumped, glass breaking. Marcus's jaw clenched as he heard his laptop being smashed, but he kept moving. Lives mattered more than evidence right now. They reached the back door just as flashlight beams started sweeping down the hallway. Marcus eased the door open, thankful he'd oiled the hinges just yesterday. The cool night air hit their faces as they slipped outside. Jalen was trembling, but remained silent, face buried against his father's shoulder. Marcus moved quickly through the shadows of their backyard, using the hedgerow as cover. He could hear radio chatter from the front yard. At least 6 officers, maybe more. "Check the back!" someone shouted from inside. "Rodriguez, cover the alley!" Marcus changed direction immediately, cutting through his neighbor's yard instead. He moved diagonally away from the alley, using houses and trees as concealment. His bare feet found every twig and pebble, but he ignored the discomfort, focusing only on getting Jalen to safety. They crossed through 3 more yards, Marcus pausing between each to listen for pursuit. His phone continued recording, capturing both the distant sounds of the raid and his own controlled breathing as they moved through the darkness. Jalen hadn't made a sound, but Marcus could feel his son's heart racing. He whispered barely audible reassurances as they navigated between houses. "You're doing great, buddy. Almost there. Stay brave for me." Monica's house was just ahead. A simple 1-story with a well-tended garden. Light glowed behind her living room curtains. Marcus had chosen their escape route, knowing she always stayed up late watching medical dramas. They crossed her front yard quickly, exposed in the open for just a few seconds. Marcus could still hear commotion from his house 2 blocks away. His knuckles rapped urgently against Monica's door, conscious that every second in the open increased their risk. "Please be home," he whispered, holding Jalen close as they waited in the shadows of Monica's porch. "Please be awake." Monica yanked open her front door, her eyes widening at the sight of Marcus and Jalen huddled on her porch. "Oh my God," she whispered, quickly ushering them inside. "Get in here, both of you." She locked the door behind them and pulled the curtains tight. Marcus's bare feet left slight dirt marks on her beige carpet, but she didn't seem to notice. Her focus was entirely on Jalen, who hadn't lifted his head from his father's shoulder. "Sit, sit," she insisted, disappearing briefly into her bedroom. She returned with 2 thick blankets, wrapping one around Jalen's shoulders as Marcus finally set him down on the couch. The second blanket went around Marcus, who was still in his t-shirt and sweatpants from earlier. "They raided the house," Marcus explained in a low voice, keeping one arm around his son. "No warning. No real warrant. Cut the power first, then broke down the door." His voice remained steady, but Monica could see the tension in his jaw, the controlled anger in his eyes. "The police did this?" she asked, sitting across from them. Her medical training kicked in as she noticed Jalen's shallow breathing. "Jalen, sweetie, try to take some deep breaths for me, okay?" The boy nodded, finally lifting his head. His eyes were wide, still processing the night's events. Monica went to her kitchen and returned with a glass of water and some cookies. "Here, something sweet might help with the shock." Marcus pulled out his phone, stopping the recording he'd been making since the raid began. "I got some of it documented, but my laptop's probably destroyed by now. They were tearing the place apart when we left." "Those bastards," Monica muttered, then quickly apologized for cursing in front of Jalen. She'd been their rock since Marcus's wife, her sister, had passed away 3 years ago. "You're staying here tonight, both of you." No arguments. Hours passed slowly. Monica made hot chocolate and put on cartoons with the volume low, trying to create some sense of normalcy. Eventually, Jalen's eyes grew heavy, the adrenaline crash hitting him hard. Monica set him up in her spare bedroom, tucking him in with extra care. "He's finally asleep," she reported, returning to find Marcus still rigid on the couch, staring at his phone. You should rest, too. I need to go back at first light, Marcus replied. Document everything before they try to cover it up. Marcus, Monica started, concern heavy in her voice. I know, he cut her off gently. But I have to do this right. They're not just going to stop. When dawn finally broke, Marcus stood in Monica's driveway, now wearing borrowed shoes and a jacket she'd insisted he take. Keep him close, he told her. Don't let anyone except me pick him up, no matter what they say. I've got him, she promised. Be careful. Marcus approached his house cautiously, photographing the exterior first. The cut power lines, the boot prints in his flower beds, the splintered door frame. A few neighbors were already up, pretending not to watch from behind their curtains. One elderly man, Mr. Chen from next door, carefully made his way over. They came in unmarked cars, Mr. Chen said quietly, looking around nervously. Black SUVs, no lights. I counted 8 men, maybe more. They were here for almost 2 hours. Did you see any warrant? Marcus asked, his phone recording the conversation. No papers, just masks and guns. Mr. Chen shook his head. This isn't right, Mr. Washington. Thank you for telling me, Marcus said sincerely. You should go inside now. Safer that way. Inside, Marcus's hands clenched at the destruction. Every drawer had been pulled out and emptied, couch cushions slashed open, photos knocked off walls. They'd even pulled up sections of carpet, presumably looking for hidden compartments. His laptop lay in pieces on the dining room table. He moved methodically through each room, filming everything. The destruction got worse toward the back of the house. Holes punched in walls, furniture overturned, even his bed frame cracked down the middle. Jalen's room had been ransacked too, toys scattered and broken, his dinosaur collection swept off shelves onto the floor. Marcus collected his encrypted backup drives from their hidden locations, behind an air vent, inside a hollow curtain rod, beneath a loose floorboard in the closet. His military training had taught him to always have contingencies. He found his go bag untouched in the attic crawl space, containing cash, documents, and emergency supplies. After 2 hours of careful documentation, he drove to a secure storage facility 20 miles away, one registered under a different name. He uploaded all the new evidence to encrypted cloud storage and left physical copies in a locked container. Back at his house, Marcus stood in the wreckage of his living room. Glass crunched under his borrowed shoes as he surveyed the damage. Family photos lay scattered on the floor, their frames broken. He picked up one showing Jalen's last birthday party, carefully removing the cracked glass. The house felt wrong now. Violated. Unsafe. He couldn't bring Jalen back here. Not yet. Monica's place would have to do for a while longer. At least there, his son could sleep without fearing another midnight invasion. Standing amid the chaos they'd left behind, Marcus spoke into the empty room, his voice hard with determination. You came into my house. Now I'm coming for your careers. Marcus sat in his home office early Monday morning, surrounded by the aftermath of the raid. His work laptop was destroyed, but he'd managed to salvage his backup tablet. Taking a deep breath, he dialed his employer's number. Good morning, this is Marcus Washington, he began, keeping his voice steady. I need to speak with HR about an urgent situation. After a few transfers, Jessica Chen, the head of HR, came on the line. Marcus, we've been hearing some concerning reports. I'm sure you have, Marcus replied carefully. That's why I'm calling. My home was illegally raided last night by police officers without a warrant. They destroyed my property, including my work equipment. There was a long pause. See? Jessica said slowly. And you're certain these were actual police officers? I have video evidence, photos, and witness statements, Marcus explained. This is part of an ongoing pattern of harassment since I reported 2 officers for racial profiling last week. Papers rustled on Jessica's end. "Marcus, given the sensitive nature of our government contracts and the liability concerns this raises, we'll need to place you on administrative leave." "Paid leave, I assume?" Marcus asked, though he already knew the answer from her tone. "Unfortunately, this will be unpaid until the situation stabilizes," Jessica replied, her voice taking on that careful corporate distance. "We need to protect the company's interests." Marcus's jaw tightened. "I understand. And how long do you expect this leave to last?" "Until we can be certain there won't be any disruptions to our operations. We'll reassess in 30 days. After ending the call, Marcus checked his bank accounts. The loss of income would hurt. He had savings, but house repairs and potential legal fees would eat through them quickly. He'd been right to move money to separate accounts they couldn't trace. His next call was to the Pentagon liaison, using the secure line they'd provided. "Sir, I need to report a significant escalation," Marcus began, his military training evident in his precise delivery. He walked through the timeline, the power cut, the masked officers, the destruction of property, the lack of warrant. The liaison's breathing changed as Marcus described Jalen being forced to flee his own home in the middle of the night. "My God," the liaison muttered. "You have documentation?" "Full audio of the raid, photographs of the damage, neighbor statements, all time-stamped and backed up securely," Marcus confirmed. "I'm sending it now through the encrypted channel. This goes beyond harassment, Mr. Washington. This is a coordinated attack on a civilian by law enforcement. I'm escalating this immediately." While Marcus worked to document and report the raid, Lieutenant Broderick was busy spinning his own narrative at the precinct. He gathered his most trusted officers in the briefing room, doors closed. "Listen up," Broderick growled. "Washington's gone off the deep end. He's making wild accusations, threatening officers, showing clear signs of instability." The officers exchanged glances as Broderick continued. "We've got reports he's been acting erratically around his kids' school. Paranoid behavior, anti-police statements, the works. If anyone asks, that's what you've observed too." One younger officer shifted uncomfortably. "But sir, the Pentagon complaint is obviously the desperate move of someone with a grudge against law enforcement." Broderick cut him off. "We're protecting our own here. Washington's dangerous, and he's trying to tear this department apart. Remember that." By afternoon, Marcus could already see Broderick's smear campaign taking effect. The school principal called, expressing concerns about Jalen attending classes. The local news ran a piece about rising tensions between police and an increasingly hostile resident. Marcus drove to the courthouse to file for an emergency injunction against the police department. The clerk's eyes widened when she saw his name on the paperwork. "Oh, our system is down right now," she stammered. "Maybe try again tomorrow?" "The computers seem to be working fine," Marcus observed calmly, noting her discomfort. "I'll wait." She disappeared into a back office, returning with a supervisor who took one look at Marcus and said, "We can't process this today. Technical issues." Marcus recorded the entire interaction on his phone, adding it to his growing evidence file. They were closing ranks, just as he'd expected. But they'd underestimated his patience, his training, his determination to protect his son. Pulling up outside Monica's house that evening, Marcus stayed in his car for a moment, watching through the window. Jalen sat at Monica's kitchen table, actually laughing as she taught him to make paper airplanes. The sight made Marcus's chest tight. His son's resilience amazed him. The raid had cost him his job. The smear campaign was trying to cost him his reputation. They'd destroyed his home, threatened his family, and tried to paint him as unstable for daring to stand up to them. But watching Jalen smile, Marcus felt a strange sense of clarity. They'd taken almost everything, which meant he had nothing left to lose. No more career to protect, No more reputation to maintain, no more system to work within. They'd pushed him to the edge, thinking he'd back down. Instead, they'd freed him to fight back with everything he had. Marcus knelt in front of Jalen outside Monica's front door, straightening the boy's school backpack straps. The morning sun cast long shadows across the quiet suburban street. "Remember what I told you about being brave?" Marcus asked softly. Jalen nodded, his eyes serious. "That sometimes being brave means letting other people help keep you safe." "That's right." Marcus pulled his son into a tight hug. "You're going to stay with Aunt Monica for a little while, just until I can fix some things. It won't be long. Promise?" Jalen's voice was small against Marcus's shoulder. "I promise, buddy." Marcus held him at arm's length, studying his face. "And you know I always keep my promises, right?" After watching Jalen disappear safely inside with Monica, Marcus climbed into his car. Instead of heading to his ransacked house, he drove downtown to a modern co-working space he'd discovered through his military contacts. The place offered private offices with enhanced security and strict confidentiality, perfect for what he needed to do. The receptionist handed him a key card to a corner office on the 4th floor. Marcus set up his laptop, spread his files across the large desk, and pulled up the secure cloud drive where he'd backed up all his documentation. Years of intelligence work had taught him the value of meticulous record-keeping. "Time to put it all together," he muttered, opening a fresh document. He started with Division 9's organizational structure, building a clear hierarchy from Lieutenant Broderick down through the ranks. Each name came with dates, incident reports, and patterns of behavior. He noted how certain officers always seemed to appear in cases involving harassment or intimidation of civilians who filed complaints. "Just like a terrorist cell," Marcus observed grimly, remembering similar analyses he'd done overseas. Same tactics, different uniform. The harassment timeline came next. He laid out every incident chronologically, starting with that first confrontation at the park. Each entry included officer names, badge numbers, witness statements, and supporting evidence. The pattern was unmistakable. Systematic escalation designed to break him down. Around noon, Marcus paused to get coffee from the break room. His military training kicked in as he scanned the street below through floor-to-ceiling windows. No patrol cars in sight, but he noticed an unmarked sedan that had been parked there too long. He photographed its license plate through the tinted glass. Back at his desk, Marcus added a section on surveillance tactics. He detailed the constant drive-bys, the unmarked vehicles, the coordinated efforts to track his movements. His intelligence background helped him recognize professional techniques being misused for harassment. The fake warrant reports, the school interviews, the anonymous tips, he typed. Classic intimidation playbook. The raid section required special attention. Marcus included floor plans of his house marked with entry points and officer positions. He attached photos of the destruction, timestamps from his security system, and audio recordings of the officers' threats. The lack of proper warrant documentation was highlighted in red. By mid-afternoon, Marcus reached the personal impact section. He documented his employment termination, including the HR call transcript and his previous stellar performance reviews. The financial damage was calculated precisely. Lost wages, property destruction, legal fees. He added the school's sudden concerns about Jalen and the courthouse's suspicious technical difficulties. Connect the dots, Marcus reminded himself. Show the pattern. The final section dealt with systemic abuse of power. Marcus cross-referenced similar cases from the past 5 years, showing how Division 9 repeatedly targeted civilians who challenged police misconduct. He included statistics on complaint dismissals, suspicious evidence losses, and witness intimidation. "They're not just dirty cops," he wrote. "They're an organized operation using police authority to silence anyone who speaks up." As the sun began to set, Marcus reviewed the completed dossier. It read like a military intelligence assessment, clear, detailed, and damning. Every claim was backed by evidence, every connection supported by data. It wasn't just his story anymore. It was a comprehensive exposure of systemic corruption. Marcus created secure copies on encrypted drives, then began the careful process of distribution. The Department of Justice received it first, followed by his contacts at the Pentagon. He sent versions to the State Attorney General's office and the governor's legal team. The final copy went to a specialized federal civil rights task force he'd learned about through General Collins. These were the people who investigated pattern or practice violations by law enforcement agencies. With each file sent, Marcus felt a weight lifting. They'd tried to bury him in fear and isolation, but they'd forgotten his training. They'd pushed him into a corner, expecting him to break. Instead, they'd given him nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. As darkness fell outside the office windows, Marcus sat back and watched the final upload complete. The evidence was out there now, spreading through channels they couldn't control or intimidate. Let them try to discredit him now. The truth would speak for itself. He thought of Jalen, probably doing homework at Monica's kitchen table right now. "Almost done, buddy," he whispered. "Just hold on a little longer." Marcus sat at Monica's kitchen table early the next morning, laptop open, and notes arranged precisely before him. His military watch showed 7:55 a.m., 5 minutes until the scheduled call with the Department of Justice and Pentagon liaison. The house was quiet. Monica had taken Jalen to school early, understanding Marcus needed privacy for this crucial conversation. His coffee had gone cold, untouched, as he reviewed key points one final time. At exactly 8:00 a.m., his secure line rang. Marcus answered, his voice steady. "Marcus Washington speaking." "Mr. Washington, this is Special Agent Claire Davidson with the DOJ Civil Rights Division." A crisp female voice responded. "I have Colonel Matthews from the Pentagon Liaison Office with me. We've reviewed your dossier and have some specific questions, if you're ready." "Yes, ma'am. I have all supporting documentation available." "Let's start with Division 9, Davidson said. "You've identified Lieutenant Broderick as the commanding officer. Can you walk us through how this unit operates within the department?" Marcus leaned forward, sliding a particular file closer. Division 9 functions as what Broderick calls his Special Operations Unit. On paper, they handle sensitive investigations. In reality, they're his enforcement arm for dealing with civilian complaints and internal threats. "How so?" Colonel Matthews asked. "They use coordinated harassment tactics, surveillance, false calls, anonymous tips. When those don't work, they escalate to direct intimidation, like the raid on my house." Marcus's voice remained measured, despite the memory. "I have documented at least 7 similar patterns against other complainants in the past 3 years. Davidson's tone sharpened. "About that raid, you mentioned no proper warrant was presented. Can you elaborate?" "They breached my door at approximately 23:47, Marcus replied, pulling up his detailed timeline. "Multiple officers in tactical gear, faces covered. They shouted, 'Police! Warrant!' but never displayed any paperwork. I have audio recordings of their entry and subsequent destruction of property." "And Lieutenant Broderick's direct involvement?" Marcus played them a clip from his phone. Officers during the raid shouting that "Lieutenant wants this wrapped up clean," and "make sure nothing's left to find." "That's his voice in the background," Marcus noted. "I served 15 years in military intelligence. I know how to verify audio signatures." The investigators asked more questions about specific incidents, dates, and personnel involved. Marcus answered each precisely, referencing his documentation and offering to provide original files. His military training showed in his organized responses and attention to detail. "Mr. Washington," Davidson said after nearly an hour. "We're seeing some disturbing correlations between your timeline and internal department logs we've accessed. The pattern matches what you've described: systematic intimidation of civilians who file complaints." Colonel Matthews added, "Several of these tactics mirror counterintelligence operations. That's particularly concerning when used against American citizens." "What happens next?" Marcus asked. "We need you to maintain a low profile for the next few days," Davidson replied. "We're moving on this, but we need to secure evidence before they can destroy more records. Can you do that?" "Yes, ma'am. My son is staying with family, and I've backed up all documentation to secure locations." "Good. We're sending federal subpoenas to the precinct today. They'll be required to surrender body cam footage, dispatch logs, and all Division 9 communications. We'll be in touch soon with next steps." After the call ended, Marcus sat back, releasing a long breath. For the first time in weeks, he felt the tide turning. Across town at the precinct, Lieutenant Broderick's morning was rapidly deteriorating. Federal agents had arrived with subpoenas, demanding immediate access to records he'd spent years protecting. His face reddened as he read the document list. "Delete everything in the Division 9 folders," he ordered a trusted officer. "Wipe the backup drives, too. Nothing leaves this building." "Sir?" The officer hesitated. "They're saying tampering with evidence." "Just do it!" Broderick snapped, not knowing federal technicians had already created mirror copies of most systems overnight. By afternoon, Marcus decided to check his house. He drove careful routes, watching for tails, but the usual patrol cars were conspicuously absent. The street was quiet when he pulled up. Inside, the destruction still shocked him. Broken furniture lay scattered across floors. Walls showed holes from searching for hidden compartments, and his home office remained ransacked. Family photos lay shattered in their frames. Marcus moved methodically through each room, packing essential items into a duffel bag. Clothes, documents, medications. He gathered Jalen's favorite books and his worn, stuffed tiger. The boy would want those. Looking around one last time, Marcus felt a mix of anger and resolve. They'd violated his home, trying to break his spirit. Instead, they'd only proved how far they'd fall to hide their corruption. As evening approached, Marcus drove to Monica's house. He wouldn't risk sleeping in his damaged home tonight, not with Broderick growing desperate. His son's safety came first, and together they'd wait for justice to finally catch up to those who'd abused their power for so long. Marcus jerked awake on Monica's couch at 4:47 a.m., his military instincts responding to the distant thrum of helicopter rotors. The sound was growing closer, accompanied by the familiar wail of multiple sirens echoing through the pre-dawn darkness. He sat up, reaching for his phone as it buzzed with incoming alerts. The screen lit up his face in the dim living room as he read the first message. "Breaking! FBI conducting mass raid on Metro Police Precinct." More notifications flooded in. Marcus opened a local news live stream, the volume low to avoid waking Jalen down the hall. The aerial footage showed federal vehicles surrounding the precinct, their emergency lights painting the street in red and blue. Dark-suited agents moved with precision, securing exits and entries. Federal authorities have launched a coordinated operation targeting alleged corruption within the department, the reporter's voice narrated over the helicopter feed. Sources indicate multiple officers are being taken into custody. Marcus watched intently, his breath steady but his heart racing. All his documentation, every carefully logged incident, every recorded interaction, it had led to this moment. The camera zoomed in as agents led a handcuffed Lieutenant Broderick out the front doors, his usual commanding presence deflated. The lieutenant's face was twisted with rage as they guided him toward a waiting vehicle. "Lieutenant James Broderick is being charged with multiple counts of conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and civil rights violations, the reporter continued. This follows a months-long investigation into systemic abuse of power within the department. More officers emerged in custody. Marcus recognized Kincaid's stocky frame and Dwyer's characteristic stiff walk as they were escorted out separately. The news ticker scrolled details of their charges: falsifying police records, witness intimidation, conducting unlawful raids. Each charge corresponded to incidents Marcus had meticulously documented. His phone buzzed with a text from Monica. "Are you seeing this?" She had woken up and was watching from her room. "Yes," he typed back. "Let Jalen sleep. We'll explain everything at breakfast." The live stream showed several officers voluntarily walking out with boxes of files, speaking with federal agents. These were the good cops, Marcus realized, the ones who'd stayed quiet out of fear but were now ready to help expose the rot. They handed over documents and thumb drives, adding to the evidence against Broderick's corrupt network. Marcus stood and walked to Monica's kitchen window. The helicopters were visible now, their searchlights sweeping across the neighborhood as news crews jockeyed for the best aerial shots. He poured himself a glass of water, his hands perfectly steady despite the adrenaline coursing through him. This wasn't victory. Not exactly. Victory would have been never having to fear for his son's safety, never having his home invaded, never losing his job. But it was justice, methodically served through proper channels. Every photo he'd taken, every audio clip he'd recorded, every incident he'd logged with military precision had helped build an ironclad case. His phone rang at 5:23 a.m. The caller ID showed DOJ secure line. "Mr. Washington," Special Agent Davidson's voice was clear despite the early hour. "I apologize for calling so early, but I wanted you to hear this directly from me." "I appreciate that, ma'am. I'm watching the news now. We've taken 23 officers into custody so far, including Broderick and the core members of Division 9. The evidence you provided was instrumental in securing our warrants and identifying key personnel." Marcus nodded silently, thinking of all the nights spent organizing files, cross-referencing incidents, building the case piece by piece. "We'll need you to testify," Davidson continued, "both for the criminal cases and the broader civil rights investigation. Given your military background and documentation practices, you're an ideal witness." "I'll do whatever's needed," Marcus replied. "There's one more thing," she added. "We've arranged federal protection for you and your son. We don't anticipate retaliation. Most of the bad actors are in custody, but it's standard procedure in cases like this." Through the window, Marcus could see the sky beginning to lighten. Soon Jalen would wake up, and they'd talk about how standing up to bullies sometimes takes time, but justice eventually comes through. "Thank you," he said to Davidson. "Will I be able to return home soon?" "Our teams finished processing it as a crime scene yesterday. Once our protection detail is in place later today, you'll be cleared to move back in. We'll also help coordinate with your employer regarding reinstatement." Marcus heard Jalen's bedroom door open and close softly. The boy was up earlier than usual, probably roused by the helicopter noise. "I need to go, ma'am. My son's awake." "Of course. We'll be in touch later today with details about the protection arrangements and next steps." Marcus ended the call just as Jalen padded into the kitchen, rubbing sleep from his eyes. The boy looked at the helicopters visible through the window, then at his father's face. "Dad? What's happening?" Marcus knelt down to his son's level, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Remember how I told you that telling the truth and standing up to bullies was important, even when it's hard?" Jalen nodded, his eyes serious. "Well, this morning, a lot of bullies are learning that lesson. And we're going to be able to go home soon." Marcus straightened his tie as he walked up the steps of City Hall, the morning sun warming his face. A week had passed since the federal raids, but the city was still buzzing with developments. News vans lined the street, their satellite dishes reaching skyward like metal trees. Inside, the marble corridors echoed with his footsteps, as a young aide led him to the main conference room. The space was already filled with journalists, community leaders, and officials in suits. Camera flashes popped as he entered. Mayor Angela Smith stood at the podium, her usual polished appearance slightly worn by the strain of recent events. "Mr. Washington, please join us." She gestured to a chair near the front. Special Agent Davidson sat nearby, offering a small nod of recognition. Marcus took his seat, scanning the room with the careful attention he'd developed over years of military service. He noticed several new faces among the police brass, replacements for those now facing charges. Their shoulders were straight, badges gleaming, but their eyes held uncertainty about the changes ahead. Mayor Smith cleared her throat, the microphone carrying her voice clearly through the packed room. "We are here today to address grave injustices committed by those sworn to protect and serve." She turned to face Marcus directly. "Mr. Washington, on behalf of this city, I offer our deepest apologies for what you and your young son, Jalen, endured." The mayor's words carried weight, but Marcus thought of Jalen's face during the night raid, of his son's trembling hands as they fled through dark yards. Some things couldn't be undone with words alone. The corruption exposed through Mr. Washington's diligence and courage has forced us to confront serious failures in our system, Smith continued. "Today, we announce comprehensive reforms to ensure this never happens again." Special Agent Davidson stepped forward, her FBI badge catching the light. "Division 9, the unit responsible for much of this misconduct, is hereby permanently dissolved. All its former members are under investigation." She paused, making eye contact with the assembled media. "Additionally, we're implementing mandatory external oversight of all police operations." The police chief, newly appointed after his predecessor's resignation, outlined specific changes. Every officer will wear body cameras that cannot be disabled. Footage will be randomly audited by independent reviewers. Community review boards will have real power to investigate complaints and recommend action. Marcus listened intently, noting how these changes aligned with recommendations from his report. Each reform addressed specific patterns he documented: the missing footage, the ignored complaints, the intimidation tactics. Mayor Smith spoke again, her tone shifting from apology to opportunity. "Mr. Washington, your unique background, military intelligence, crisis management, and now first-hand experience with police misconduct makes you invaluable to our reform efforts." She gestured to a folder on the table. "We'd like to offer you a position as lead consultant for our new officer training program." Marcus opened the folder, scanning the details. The role would let him shape how officers learned to interact with citizens, recognize bias, and maintain accountability. His salary would be substantial, with authority to implement real changes. "Your experience will help us rebuild trust," the police chief added. "Show our officers a better way forward." Marcus thought of Jalen, of other children who might face similar situations. "I accept," he said firmly into the microphone, "but I'll need full autonomy to design the program as I see fit." "Agreed," Mayor Smith nodded. "We've learned the cost of maintaining the status quo." The meeting continued with details about his house. The city had approved an emergency settlement covering all repairs plus additional compensation. Workers had already replaced the broken doors, repaired the walls, and restored the rooms to order. As cameras flashed and officials shook hands, Marcus felt a complex mix of emotions. The reforms were significant, but they'd come at a heavy personal price. He thought of his military training, how sometimes the hardest victories leave the deepest scars. After the meeting, he drove home slowly, still adjusting to the unmarked federal vehicle that now followed him for protection. The sight of his restored house brought a surge of relief. The front door was new, solid oak instead of the old hollow core, with reinforced frames and better locks. Inside, fresh paint covered the marks of violence, but he could still map where every blow had landed. Marcus checked his watch. School would be out soon. He'd pick up Jalen and bring him home. Really home, for the first time since the raid. The boy had been brave through all of it, stronger than any 8-year-old should need to be. He walked through each room, checking windows and cameras out of habit now. The security system was new, top of the line, with direct links to federal response teams. The kitchen had been restocked, Jalen's favorite cereals lined up in the pantry. Later, as the sun set, Marcus and Jalen sat at their own dinner table again. The boy's feet swung beneath his chair as he ate, his plate piled with the mac and cheese he'd requested for their first meal back. The familiar creak of house-settling sounds no longer made either of them jump. "Dad?" Jalen looked up from his food. "Are we really staying?" Marcus reached across the table, squeezing his son's hand. "Yes, we're home for good. They won't ever knock down this door again." The autumn breeze rustled through the trees at Riverside Park, carrying the sweet scent of fallen leaves. Marcus Washington sat on the same bench where everything had started months ago, but the weight on his shoulders felt different now. Lighter. The morning sun painted everything in warm golden tones, a stark contrast to the dark memories of that first confrontation. Jalen bounced beside him, his energy barely contained. "Can I go to the monkey bars, Dad?" Marcus smiled, noting how his son's voice had lost that edge of worry it had carried for so long. "Go ahead, buddy. I'm right here watching." As Jalen ran toward the playground, Marcus observed the changes in the park. New security cameras dotted the area discreetly, part of the city's reformed surveillance program. The patrol patterns had shifted too, less intimidating, more community-focused. A woman in a Navy uniform approached, her badge reading, "Community Safety Officer Torres." Her walk was purposeful, but relaxed, nothing like the aggressive stance Kincaid had used that first day. "Good morning, Mr. Washington," she said, maintaining a respectful distance. "Just checking in to see if you and your son are doing well today." Marcus nodded, appreciating how she positioned herself to keep Jalen in view without making him a target. "We're doing fine, Officer Torres." "Thank you." "Glad to hear it. Please don't hesitate to flag me down if you need anything." She smiled and continued her rounds, giving them space while remaining visible from her new position near the park's entrance. "Dad." "Watch this," Jalen called from the monkey bars, his face bright with concentration as he swung from rung to rung. Marcus watched his son's progress, remembering how Jalen had frozen in fear when Dwyer barked at him months ago. Now his boy moved with confidence, showing no hesitation when other officers passed by. The transformation brought a warmth to Marcus's chest that had nothing to do with the morning sun. A portable radio on a nearby picnic table quietly broadcasted the morning news. Federal prosecutors have announced trial dates for former Lieutenant Broderick and Officers Kincaid and Dwyer. The charges include civil rights violations, conspiracy, and abuse of power. Meanwhile, the police reforms sparked by the Washington case continue to expand. Marcus tuned out the news, focusing instead on Jalen's laughter as he played with other children. Parents who might have once pulled their kids away now smiled and waved, having seen his story on the news. Some had even approached him at the grocery store or gas station to share their own experiences with police harassment. A young boy about Jalen's age ran past, wearing a Junior Police Academy t-shirt. Instead of tensing up, Marcus felt hopeful. The new training program he was developing would help ensure that kids' dreams of being an officer wouldn't be corrupted by the likes of Broderick. The morning passed peacefully. Jalen made friends with 2 other boys, their game of chase weaving between the playground equipment. Marcus watched them play, noting how different officers rotated through the park. Each one professional, each one clearly displaying their badge number and name tag as per the new regulations. "Did you see me, Dad?" Jalen called out, hanging upside down from the monkey bars. "I did it without stopping." "Great job, buddy," Marcus called back, his pride evident in his voice. "Want to show me one more time?" As Jalen demonstrated his improved skills, Marcus reflected on how far they'd come. The nightmares had mostly stopped. Jalen no longer jumped at sudden noises. The therapy sessions, covered by the city's settlement, had helped them both process the trauma of the raid. A family walked by with a newspaper, the headline visible: "Former Division 9 officers face federal charges." Below it was a photo of Broderick being led away in handcuffs, his face a mask of disbelief. The image didn't bring Marcus joy, just a quiet satisfaction that justice was being served. The community safety officer passed by again, this time helping a lost toddler find his mother. The difference in approach was stark. No hands near weapons, no aggressive posturing, just genuine service to the community. "Hey, Dad!" Jalen called, running back to the bench. "Can we get ice cream?" Marcus checked his watch. They'd been at the park for over an hour, longer than they'd managed to stay that first day. "Sure thing. Same place as last time?" Jalen nodded eagerly, reaching for Marcus's hand as they stood to leave. The gesture, once born of fear, now came from simple affection. They walked together across the park, passing the spot where Kincaid had tried to force Marcus against the bench. That memory's sting had faded, replaced by the knowledge that such abuse of power now carried real consequences. The radio continued its quiet broadcast as they passed. "The Washington case has become required study material at police academies statewide, with similar programs being considered nationally." Marcus squeezed Jalen's hand gently as they walked toward the park exit, both of them smiling. The morning sun caught Jalen's face as he looked up at his father, trust and safety evident in his expression. Behind them, the careers of corrupt officers lay in ruins, transformed into a powerful warning for anyone who might consider following their path. I hope you enjoyed that story. Please like the video and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. In the meantime, I have handpicked 2 stories for you that I think you will enjoy. Have a great day.